Well, welcome everybody to this call, this August call in Three Principles Conversations, and a really warm welcome to you, Christine Heath. Thank you so much for joining us and getting up early in Hawaii. I think you're possibly our furthest situated guest, and I really appreciate you making the time. Before some of the other people on the call joined us, I was explaining that one of the things that prompted me to reach out to you was something I heard attributed to you, that you were keen for people to not become Three Principles practitioners, but to utilize what they had been touched with by the principles in their own profession. Oops. Oh dear. I've just lost you. Just give me a moment. All these plans are being made in place, Diane, just in the hopes that sorry. Have to do back in the spring. Christine, I just lost you from. I'm going to just pin your video.
Oh, I'm here.
No, it's not your fault. It's the something's happening with the Zoom. Must have made some changes to its settings, so I lost you from the recording, but you're back on. I've pinned your video. Anyway, I know that you have done that. For those who don't already know you, and I can't imagine that there are many who don't, you have a very long history. I think you encountered Sid way back, and you've done so much. You are a psychologist. You've set up a number of clinics and other centres. You're an author, you're a presenter, you're a teacher, and you've worked, as I understand it, between Minnesota and Hawaii, where you now are. So I would just think it's probably more appropriate for me to hand it over to you to tell us what you think about sharing the principles, or indeed anything else that seems appropriate tonight.
Christine. Okay. All right. Well, aloha, and thank you all for actually letting me do this talk at this hour, because usually people want me to do it at like 6 a.m. my time, which is I feel like this is the middle of the afternoon. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for asking me to speak. It's an honor also always for me to talk about what I've had the luck of stumbling into. And that's really kind of what happened to me in 1980. I'm sure some of you have heard this story, but I was actually looking for a husband, and I had been going to bars, and I kept finding people that had problems with alcohol. I don't know how that worked, but it just didn't work out for a good relationship. So I decided psychology conferences would be a better fit than bars. I'd try that out and see if I could find a husband there. It's kind of interesting because what I found was love. I was looking for love, really. I was looking to feel and be loved, and that's what I found, but certainly not in the form I thought it was going to take. Mm-hmm. So I have been a therapist. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've been a therapist since 1976. So I was actually 74, I think. So 6 years I was a therapist before I came across the principles. And I was pretty burned out at the time. I was going to get out of the field, quite frankly, because I thought people would get better, but they weren't happy, and I wasn't happy, and that's really what I was looking for. And so when I stumbled across the principles, it was, for me anyway, it was truly a super transformative experience right away. And I was kind of thrown into my job as a different person. So it's like I went to this training on Friday, and on Monday I went to work and I had a different job. All the same clients, all the same things were there, but I was different and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I had to really kind of punt. And so I walked in and I said, I've learned this new thing, and I've always done the best I can for all of you. And I am really going to start working from this new model. Are you interested in it? And so they're all like, first of all, I came in smiling, which I'm sure shocked all of them, because I was really the most serious, negative, angry. I was a real angry person at the time. And I was a feminist therapist at the time. So that was kind of I was championing the rights of the undertrod and getting caught up in it at the same time. And so I came in with a smile on my face and a good feeling, and I started talking from this feeling. I had no idea what I was saying, and what came out of me was so powerful that all but two, I had 65 clients, and all but two stayed with me when I changed. And that's, I mean, that's really miraculous in and of itself. So as I started to work from this understanding, I just kept going deeper and deeper myself. So I signed up for a training. I flew from Minneapolis in Minnesota to Florida, to Miami, Florida, every few months for over a year as a training program. And each time I would go down, I'd think, oh my gosh, I'm as calm and as positive as a human could be. And then I'd come back in 2 months and I'd go like, oh, whoops, I guess I'm calmer and more positive now. And after a while, I finally figured it out, like, oh, there's no end to this. Like, it's going to keep going. And so that, that's the first thing that I think is really important, is that in this work, it's not about the doing of it in a sense, like intellectually figuring out what you're going to do and then go do it. Like, I think I'm going to teach the principles. Now, how do I do that? To me, it's like letting life come to you. Like, life comes to you and shows you how you can share the principles. But I think a lot of times people get the idea that they're so touched by this, they want to go out and share it with people, which is great. But you can share it anywhere. You don't have to I thought people try to be make it be their business to teach the principles. And there's just something that doesn't work about that for a lot of people. Like, sometimes it's true, but I didn't really start teaching the principles until maybe a year after I was teaching the principles to my clients in my work. But I didn't go out and try to share it with other professionals because I just didn't see it deep enough myself. And so for me, I think that you can share the principles anywhere. I mean, there's the most versatile thing in the world. You can be an accountant and see how the principles could help accountants. You can be a real estate agent and see how understanding the principles would help you with real estate. It just works everywhere with people. So as long as you're working with people, you're good to go. Computers, I don't think the computer's going to have a transformation, but human beings can. And that to me is the thing that's so powerful. And because every single human being knows the principles at one level, like we are all the principles. So everybody, I just assume that people already know that. You can carry them anywhere. You can take it out anywhere. But when you kind of get it intellectually, okay, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go teach the principles and I'm going to try to make a living out of it. It's hard for people. It doesn't work that well because you're not letting it come to you. At least this is just my thinking and what I observe over the years is like, if you want to teach the principles, you just make that request out to your wisdom and say, gosh, I just really want to share this somehow. And then things happen, and maybe it would be that you go into teaching the principles and having a coaching practice or whatever it is that you do. But I just think that the principles are where you're coming from. So it doesn't matter what you do, you'll be sharing the principles as you awaken to it, as you wake up to it. So you're not limited. It's not like there's just one way to share the principles, and that's to open up a practice teaching the principles. Sometimes I talk to I do scent training for dogs. And I end up talking to people in the scent, and it just comes out of me. It's like I don't even want it to come out of me. I don't even want people to know what I do, really. And I end up having people ask me questions about what I do, what's different about it, and then I can share that. So to me, what I do is I follow the feeling, right? And so as I'm living in a feeling and I'm sharing this and I'm doing my life, I see what comes up, and then I follow that and do that. And I mean, I've done things I never would have thought I was, I'm from Minnesota. Basically, people that live in Minnesota never leave Minnesota. they're like, they stay there for life. And the whole idea of moving to Hawaii was blew people away. It just blew people's minds, especially my family. They were like, "You're what?" So my mother was sure I was going to move back after 6 months. She said, "Well, okay, honey, but you can come back if you want to." And I was like, "No, Mom, it'll be okay." And once I got to Hawaii, I was totally insecure because I had no clue. I had it in my mind because, you know, we were in Minnesota, Joe Bailey and I were in Minnesota, and we both kind of got into this work, and we were like awake and things were happening. It was the most wonderful, exciting time in my life, really. And it had all just happened. It all came to us. It all like flowed from us. So I thought I'd move to Hawaii and the same thing would happen, right? It's like, okay, I'm just going to go here and start a clinic and then it'll just kind of happen. And it was like, oh, okay, no, this is really different. And I realized I moved to a different country that had a totally different cultural way. And all of a sudden, all my thinking, my Minnesota thinking, my white privileged thinking was on my eyeballs everywhere. And I had to make a lot of adjustments in myself before I could get things to work here. So to me, there's two things. One is you keep going deeper in yourself, and then you'll see how to share the principles, as opposed to looking for how to share the principles and then getting some insight from that. But when you do that, you really got to have faith in your wisdom. You got to have faith that things will come to you. And as you see that and you get out of trying to figure it out, it makes it flow easier. It's a lot more fun too, because you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to be putting everything on yourself. It's kind of like things just come to you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's what I think is the most fun of it, is going into the unknown, walking into the unknown and being always aware of how we get thoughts about things. We get thoughts about what we should do. We get thoughts about where we should go. We should get all kinds of thoughts about things, but we don't even know we have them. We're kind of blind to them. Keith Blevins used to call them silent thoughts, where we have these thoughts and we don't know we're having them, but they're definitely getting in the way of our being able to change or share or do whatever. And that's the other thing. It's kind of like to keep changing rather than like, I think one of the things that's really important for everybody is to, as you go deeper, is to really change. Like that was something that we were all initially, when I was first involved with this, it was all about how can you change your life to make it reflect a more beautiful feeling. So whether it's your work life or your home life, you're looking to see how to do things differently. And if you start getting those eyes, you get the eyes for looking at that, you can teach the principles anyway. You can share the principles in any place that you feel comfortable. Like that's the deal, right? It's like as you feel comfortable in a given area, you'll have more security. So it'll be easier to do that. If you put yourself in the place that you're the most insecure and then go try to teach the principles, it's not going to work very well.
Yeah, lovely. Christine, I see loads of people have joined since we started. So I was just going to reiterate that the invitation, please do. Christine is very up for questions or comments or interactions. So please do come in. You can either just come in or raise your hand or put something in the chat box. But I think you're very keen to hear from people. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
We have a wealth of experience here. Michelle Gardner has raised her hand. Michelle, can you unmute yourself and just come in?
Hi.
Hi,
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Hi, Christine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. To be honest, I've had a shit day. I'm just gonna put that right out there now. I love what you just said about it's about being comfortable first and then going out and teaching the principles, because I've been getting more and more fearless and I've been sharing some pretty raw stuff in some of the 3Ps community groups that I'm part of. One thing that's kind of happened with me is that I've had maybe 2 or 3 people say, well, when you're coming out your comfort zone, you know, what are you going to do? What's your goals? And then it all gets up here. And I think that's why I've had a bit of a struggle today, because, you know, my thinking went from being in my heart to going up in my head. And
what are you doing?
oh, I seem to have lost you. I don't know if you're still there.
But I wanted to lay down when I did it.
I think Laura needs to be muted.
That's it. That's it. I got you. So yeah, I wonder if you could expand a little bit more on being comfortable, because at the moment there seems to be a lot kind of going around in communities about, you know, goals and pushing yourself. And to me right now, you know, self-care, nurturing is important to me, because, and I'm gonna share something quite raw now. I have a few health challenges, and I was on a huge amount of medication, oral morphine, slow release morphine, diazepam, you name it, I had it for pain management. And then I found out that actually all of that opioid medication was doing me far more damage than it was doing me good. So I made a decision to start withdrawing from that myself. And that, you know, that's been quite a tough journey, because one thing I wasn't aware of was that I've pretty much buried my feelings my whole life and been afraid of them. And that medication was actually helping to numb those feelings. And during the period that I was on that medication, I lost both my parents, not at the same time. There was an 8-year gap in between losing them. But as I came down off the medication, I found myself in a position of being mentally not very well, and also going through grief. The 3Ps transformed my mental health. I can honestly put my hand on my heart and say that. The grief, I think, has been a little bit, it's kind of been a bit weird to become mentally healthy but go through grieving at the same time, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So I just wondered if you could maybe give me some pearls of wisdom in terms of, you know, maybe go a little bit deeper into what you just said about being comfortable first yourself before you do anything.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that. That's really great.
Okay.
There's 2 things. One is you can tell when, I mean, the principles are not, we're not immune to being intellectual about the principles. People start thinking about the principles and then you lose a feeling. So what happens is that people get up in their intellect and they want to be in control. That's how I look at it. You know, it's like you got to have goals, you got to be in control of your life, and you got to go 1,000,000 miles an hour. That's really the opposite of what we're understanding about our own mental health, right? So unfortunately, when you're coming from that place of walking into the unknown, when you're moving into a space you haven't lived for a long time or you haven't spent much time at, when you start operating from your heart, as you said, when you start coming from that feeling and you do things that occur to you from that feeling, a lot of people have trouble with that because they want to like figure it out. Like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Like when I moved to Hawaii, oh my God, people were just crazy. Like, well, when are you leaving? Well, how long does it take to get there? Well, what are you going to do for a job when you get there? I was like, I have no idea. I'm going to leave sometime in July and I'm going to drive out there and, you know, when I get there, I'll figure it out. what? You don't have a job there? What are you going to do for money? I said, I don't know, but I have a lot of faith that it'll work out. Don't worry about it. But they were just trying to figure it all out because it was so foreign, right? So what happens is that what Sid would tell us is that go live your life and have a nice life. And then you'll see how to share the principles. And so you finding that feeling in yourself and trusting that will help you to see how to get through anything. Now, the other thing, as you were talking, that sometimes people get this weird idea that being mentally healthy means you never have a bad feeling. And honestly, when you are going through grieving or other things, being mentally healthy is actually feeling loss. I mean, that's part of what we do, and that's okay. But what the principles help us to do is to see that we don't have to stay there. So to me, the way I describe this is, because I live, in Hawaii, but it's like when you get in the water, in the ocean, the waves come at you. If you turn your back on the wave, it knocks you down and you get all caught up in the wave. So the rule of the ocean is you just face the wave and you understand that it's coming through you, right? So the wave goes through you and it kind of juggles you around a little bit. And so you go to your core, you go to your psychological core, you go inside where your security is. And then you still get juggled around, but it passes, and then your good feeling comes back again. And then another wave hits you, and it's like, wow, there it is. But eventually the waves calm down and they hit you periodically. But when you know it's just thought that's kind of running through your body, it's not a big deal. Nothing to be afraid of.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what happens is we try to think about how to do things ahead of time when we don't know. So if you've never done something and you go into memory to try to figure out how to do it, you're only going to repeat what you've already done. That's why I think it was Einstein that said the problems of the world will never be solved at the level that they're created, because the thinking at that level of consciousness is always going to lead you back to the same thing. That's just the way our intellect works. If you step back and you get quiet and you just start to really enjoy your life and you start to take care of yourself and you really put that as a priority, then what happens is from within you, new thought comes and you start to see what to do in your life. And you can't figure it out ahead of time. This doesn't work like that. Like, wisdom is not like on demand, where you can like call it up and say, okay, I need a wise thought right now. Please give me a new thought here. But if you're enjoying your life and you really have faith in that wisdom, then as you go through what you're doing, you trust yourself. And that helps to get rid of that fear. The fear comes, I think, because we know we don't know what we're doing, but we think we should know, right? And so we try to figure it out, make stuff up and plan things rather than just going with that flow of things, trusting that with that feeling, your eyes will open and you'll see where to go and what to do. And then I always say when we're in that feeling, that angels appear, that people come into your life that then help you to get to where you're going. I mean, people have shown up in my life that I'm shocked at. They're like, really? Oh, okay. And then I start thinking, right, like, oh, this is going to be a great opportunity for me to share the principles. They're going to get this and take it out into this world, and then they disappear. And it's like, oh, that was an illusion. Nope, okay, keep looking. Because over the years, there were a lot of illusions, a lot of things have come and gone. But the thing to me that has always been my kind of northern star is to go back inside of myself, to create a beautiful life for myself. Like, I'll tell you the story. We live on the Big Island in Hawaii, which is absolutely the most beautiful place on the planet. And we were looking to find a house here after my husband got promoted when he turned 60. And we went back to Minnesota for 10 years against my better judgment, I have to say. I fought it like the plague. But my mother had just gone in a nursing home. And so I thought, okay, we'll go back to Minnesota for 3 to 5 years, and then she'll pass on and we'll come back. So we went back, but she lived to be almost 100. She was 6 weeks short of 100. And then, so by the time we came back, the real estate market had crashed and all kinds of things had happened. And when we were trying to find a place, we couldn't find a place that I was willing to pay that much money for. And my deal was I wanted to see the ocean. And so we couldn't find any place where we used to live on Oahu. So my husband got online and he finds this house. And the house was originally 1.3 million, and then they dropped it down to 800,000, and then they dropped it down to 700,000, and then they dropped it down to 600,000. And I kept saying, nah, I don't like it. Nah. And then I said, well, offer them 550, which I know in a lot of places is a lot of money, but in Hawaii, that's like a steal. And so we did, and we got the house. It was like, who would have thought? And it's way too big for us. It's like we're old and we have this huge house and 11 acres, but we've got this beautiful view, 180-degree view of the ocean. And it is a spectacular view. At night, there's no street lights where I live. So the meteor shower, last night we were out looking at the meteors and looking at how beautiful it was. And so after we were here about 6 months, my husband, who's a big Hawaiian guy, had a lava lava. You know what a lava lava is? Like a wrap around your body. And he was standing with his hands on his hips, looking at the ocean, looking over the property that we just bought. And I went out to him and I said, well, honey, did you ever think we'd have a 180-degree view of the ocean? He said, no. He said, I never dreamed this. You must have dreamed it. And we just both kind of smiled, but that's just kind of the way my life has happened. It's like it just keeps coming. And I don't know. I mean, I would never have thought I was going to live on this island. Never, ever, ever. It wasn't in the plan. So to me, the plan you make up is only as good as the level of consciousness you're living at. That's all you can see to do. That's all that looks possible. So whatever you make up, you're limited by your level of consciousness. If you go deeper and you live in a deeper state of consciousness, then suddenly life looks differently. The plan you'd create would be totally different. So I could not have created the life I have now when I first learned the principles, because I didn't know it was possible to live like this. I couldn't imagine it. But that's kind of as you evolve and you change and you live in a more beautiful feeling, you get to see more and more. Like maybe 10 years from now, I'll look back and say, wow, I thought I was living a great life then. This is even better now. But I don't know what that looks like. So I don't know what, otherwise I'd do it now, right? But that's kind of the evolution of things, is that if you get out of your intellect and you let it come to you, let it happen, it's way better than you could think up.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really, really, really helpful, because yeah, I kind of got up in my head and I was like, Rob, it's not okay to be where I'm at now, and actually it is.
Yeah. You got to trust yourself. You're the only person who knows what you should do.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you both. Kajal has a question. Kajal, can you unmute yourself?
Thank you, Christian.
Hi.
Hi, Christine.
Hi.
Could you please speak up? Yes, there you are. It's lovely, always lovely to hear you, and I'm a great fan. And thank you for sharing your story. Very beautiful. I just want to share a couple of things. One was, I came from a spiritual background. And for 12 years, I was in a spiritual community and followed the discipline and practice and everything. And when I discovered the principles back in 2013, it just opened my eyes and mind to something my heart knew was true. And in 2017, I sort of had the courage to break away from my spiritual community to sort of, so that I could pursue the principles in my own way, rather than sort of trying to straddle two boats. And I'm very glad that I did that. Uh, when I share the principles, I tend to attract people from spiritual communities.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I attract. Um, they are very drawn. They love what is being shared, but they are so entrenched in their own belief system. And I'm talking more about the Asian culture, because the Asian philosophies are very, very sort of ancient and very entrenched in people's lives,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't seem to sort of see the benefit or see the difference, or because they are so caught up with their own system. So that's one issue that I have. So everything that I say, they love it. They love it. But they always are drawing sort of parallels and comparing it with their own belief. So that's one struggle that I have. And the second one is uh, throughout my life, like I have sort of been associated with different spiritual masters. So, for example, J. Krishnamurti, who we know that Sid sort of refers to, or the books are. So I was in the presence of J. Krishnamurti back in the 70s in India. So I literally used to sit at his feet and listen to spiritual teachings. And since many other spiritual traditions I've been exposed to, right now, three principles is everything for me. But when I share, I hesitate to say that what I'm sharing is the three principles. I don't know why, but it's almost like I have to respect every tradition that I have um, gone past. So these are the two things. So I'm not sure why I'm not so free in saying I'm sharing three principles. It's almost like I'm also indebted to all the spiritual traditions that I have.
Well, I mean, is there a problem with that?
As long as I think I wanted to hear from someone that no, it's not a problem.
When I first came across the principles, we didn't even have three principles. And then we're listening to Sid and we made up four. Not even, only one of them was one of the three principles. So, I think that when you go into any organization or anything, if you're like go in with teaching the principles, you're going in with a mindset. And so you have to listen to your own wisdom about how to reach people. Like eventually you want to talk to them about the three principles, right? Because that's what makes this work so different than other spiritual teachings, is that Sid was able to pull the pieces that were helpful in all of those other things together into something super simple. And people like I studied with psychics. That was my vent into spirituality. I tried to do astro travel and stuff like that. But I wasn't really interested in the spiritual world. So I haven't spent much time in that. But whether it's religious or spiritual or whatever you call it, it's a way of thinking about mind, right? And so once people get into thinking about the formless energy, they make up stuff. And there's pieces that they have, right? There's pieces that they have, but they're not really listening for anything new. So what you're talking about is that happens to me in psychology too. I do a training and people come up and say, oh, this is just like, one talk I did, one of the first ones I ever did, a person came up and they said, oh, this is just like Christianity. I was like, okay. And the next person said, oh, this is just like Buddhism. Like, okay. Oh, this is just like the 12 steps. Okay. This is just like Adler. And I was like, okay, because people are all listening with their intellect. So sometimes you have to, especially people that are kind of really focused on their thinking a lot, people that are more intellectually based, you really got to just start off with listening. How to listen without thinking, how to listen for something new, how to listen for a feeling. because what they're getting from you is a feeling, and then they go up in their head and they start thinking about it, right? So again, if you come back to being really super slow with them, like sometimes I find that with clients that come in, have had a lot of traditional therapy, it takes me like maybe 6 months just to get them to get a shift in how they listen. And so it doesn't matter. There's no like right way or wrong way to do it. You just have to trust your own wisdom and then come from that. And then eventually, as you, like, I always point people to Sid's talks and Sid's materials, and he talks about lots of things in his books as a way. He doesn't just come out and say, okay, the 3 principles are mind, thought, and consciousness, and this is what they mean, da 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 da. It's however you wake somebody up to it, and then their own wisdom makes the connection. That's when they see it. You can't get it intellectual and then apply it in your life, and that's what they're trying to do, right? That's that spiritual world, is that it's thinking about the spiritual and thinking in ways that are more positive, more loving, but there's no aliveness to it. So to me, it's like the aliveness of mind is what we are, and how you share that is totally up to you. I mean, eventually, as people start listening, you want to, point them in that direction, because the principles make a huge difference. What Sid brought into the world makes everything simple. So it's like all of this stuff, and it goes whoosh, like that. And when people see that, then they wake up and they see the simplicity of it. But you can't get them to think it their way down. It's like it has to come from within, from listening. So there's no right way or wrong way, and don't let anybody tell you that there is, because every single person shares the principles in a different way. You have to share what you know, and that's enough. That's always enough. As you do that, you'll go deeper and you'll see more, and you can share more. Like, it's like, to me, the most wonderful thing about the principles is after 40 years of doing it, it's been 40 years, yeah, 40 years will be in December that I first heard about the principles when I was, 7. But I'm just really waking up to my own thinking in lots of different ways, especially around this Black Lives Movement and the work I'm doing with 3PGC to be more diverse as a community. It was like, oh, so humbling, and so, oh my God, I can't believe this. And I think I'm already, I'm married to a Hawaiian. I'm pretty aware of the things that people have to go through. But to wake up myself and go like, oh my God, look at my thinking about this. This is awful. And then moving on to feeling grateful from that, like, wow, oh, okay, now what can I do about that? So that aliveness, don't lose that. Don't think you know the principles. I mean, one of the last times Sid talked to me, he was really upset with me about something, and he was like, you don't know what the principles are. And I said, okay, should I stop teaching? He goes, no. And so, that's, I'll just pass that on. It's like, you never know what they are. Whatever you think you know, that's not it. That's just your best rendition at the time. And that's kind of the fun of it, is that you can do something for 40 years. 40 years, I mean, I talk about this all day long for 40 years, and I'm still jazzed about it. That's hard to find. But I'm jazzed about it because I know I don't know it. And so, yeah, there's no rules to this. Like, of course you don't want to do stupid things like, make a habit out of analyzing people's past or things like that. But, the point is that once you see the principles, you'll guide people toward their own wisdom. You'll take them in the direction that you can, and you're just pointing the way anyway. They got to go. It's like you're just pointing the way, and a good feeling like, hey, you could live here too. Just go over there. Just take a look over there. Just start living your life from that feeling and see what happens. That's where the magic is. The magic is in that feeling, and that's what transforms our life.
Thank you very much. That is very, very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you go for it.
Thank you.
You know, it's like that's kind of what I was talking about. It's like whatever areas you're comfortable in, like, you know, that world, you know how they are, you know what's going on. So it's like that, to me, that primes the pump, you know, so that when wisdom, because wisdom as it comes through, wisdom uses memory, but memory cannot use wisdom. It doesn't go the other way. So whatever you have in your head about life or about your work or about a certain group of people or whatever, that's just going to help you to see the principles deeper. And then you're like learning as you go. I mean, isn't that the most fun when you're talking to somebody and what comes out of your mouth is totally new for you? Like, that just is such a gas for me when that happens, because I'm like, yeah, oh my God, I didn't see that before. And when it's the same old, and believe me, this happens to me all the time. Like, okay, and I'm saying the right things, but there's not a feeling behind it. So, I mean, like last week, I just took a week off because I realized I was just talking about it too much. I lost my feeling. And it wasn't like I had a bad feeling, right? It just wasn't as powerful. So that's what I do is I know that's where the power comes from. If I lose that, I got nothing. I just have Christine Heath's words, and believe me, they're not worth a dime a dozen. So just remember that feeling that comes through you, it comes through me, it comes through everybody. It's what we are. So the more you trust that, the less insecure you are about what you've got to do.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody else got a question?
You quieted everybody down, Christine.
Yeah, that's what happens, isn't it? It's like,
I've got a question.
okay.
Right. Oh, come in. I'm just trying to find your.
I'm here. I haven't got my camera on because I'm working at the moment.
Are you able to put it? Are you
it's
able
just an
to put it on?
observation I've had.
Sorry, carry on.
Okay. Yeah, an observation from when I've been sharing the principles. A lot of people just find it very difficult to accept something that's quite so simple and relatively non-complex. And I guess it's because we live in a world where we're taught everything has to be complex and overthought and over-egged. And it seems that's the biggest hurdle I face with people, is that they just can't accept something that's so relatively easy to, well, it's relatively easy to explain, but to get a grasp of.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very common, because people are coming in. I just find for myself, I just talk about what I see for myself, is when people say that to me, I'm still trying to connect with their intellect. So it's a matter of, we're all trained to try to figure stuff out and then apply it to our life. So when they get a little insight, they get a glimpse, the fact that they can see how simple it is your key, right? Because they see that it's simple, but then they go to their intellect to think about it. So their intellect, I often talk about my intellect like it's the pimp that lives in my head. So it's kind of like this thinking I have in my head that keeps me insecure. So when we start to change and we start to see something or hear something different, the intellect will kick in and tell you not to go in that direction because you've programmed it a different way, right? So when people start to get a little glimpse, sometimes they'll do that. But if you just keep going back and just telling them, don't worry about that, it's very profound what we're talking about here, but it is really simple. And isn't that how new inventions always come into the world. They come in and make things simpler. So there's ways that I'll use examples of how that is for people so that they can just relax, because they just get insecure because it's different than the way that they've been thinking. And, we're all trained to be smart. We like to be smart. We like to figure things out. We like to use our intellect to understand things. And then we think we're quite good at whatever it is. But I always talk about that mental well-being is something that doesn't come from the intellect. Like, you can't think your way into happiness. You can create, temporary good feelings that way, but you can't live there. So it's just getting people to see that what you're talking about is a space that's deeper, and then they'll see why it's so simple. Anyway, that's kind of the what I found with people, is because a lot of times people come in and they're highly educated and very attached to their thinking. And so they don't want to let go of it much. But it's just a way that we program our own thinking. We program it based on how we've lived our life and what we thought. And we have these ideas about life and how to get better. And one of them frequently is for people to figure out what to do. I call it the information application mode. So you get information and then you apply it in your life. But mental well-being and that feeling that they're looking for doesn't come in that way. Like true happiness. So again, it's bringing the client back to why they're even listening to you, not to learn the principles, but to have a better life. Like, that's the idea, to be kinder, to be more loving, to be more at peace, to live in a better feeling. That's kind of what most people are looking for. But sometimes people get the idea that they want to understand something so that they can then feel better. But taking them, does that make sense? I'm a little bit scattered here, but does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes. So again, it's the intellect that reaches out and grabs things and tries to contain them and box them and codify them, and it's the opposite, complete diametric opposite to that. It's letting go. It's not grabbing hold of.
Right. Well, mental well-being is a space. It's not an idea. It's like people that have less attachment to their intellect tend to be happier because they don't care so much about it. But people that really are attached to their intellect have a hard time letting it go. So when somebody says that to you, that's all they're saying. And as like for me, I had all these like negative thoughts about myself that when I started to relax and be more secure, these thoughts would come in like, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, oh, that's right, I forgot about that. It was almost like, it was somebody else talking to me. And so that happens for people in different ways. Like, one of the ways it happens for people is it comes in and says, oh, this is different from what you've been taught. This can't be any good. Oh, that's true. Okay. So it's just, again, that's just the level of listening the person's at. So as you just keep pointing them toward that feeling, and that's really why they're talking to you, it's easier to let go of that.
For sure. When I first came across the principles, I remember the afternoon break. I was sitting in the garden outside the building, and mulling over the idea of being able to just relax into what had been shared, and I just my instinct just wouldn't allow it to happen. I was constantly fighting. What is it looking for a feeling? What is this? But it dawned upon me that I was actually sitting in this pool of peace and calmness that I hadn't known for years. And my thinking just dropped away, and it was this kind of revelation of calmness. Oh, that's what it is. That's what it's about.
That's right. That's right. And that's the story you should tell them.
I try, and sometimes I get very strange looks.
Yeah, that's okay.
Exactly.
It's okay. You're talking. You're talking Swahili to them, and they're like, trying to figure it out. But if you just tell them to keep listening and just keep hanging in there, and remember that, you know, that the reason they're there is not to learn the principles, but to have a better life. If you remember that, it'll guide you in how to work with each person.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Thank you. All those questions are great. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks both. M has a question, Christine.
Okay.
Can you unmute yourself? Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. I just want to start by saying I am wearing clothes. It just doesn't look like I am.
I understand it's quite hot over there.
It's unusually hot, so we're really struggling in the UK to handle it. So, but
I talked to a group yesterday, and they were all sweating, and I said, "Don't you guys have fans?" No, it's never like this.
No, that would just be a waste of money. Christine, I've loved hearing what you've been saying. I'm relatively new to all of this, and I'm actually, as Mel was just describing there, I'm one of these over intellectualizers. And I find it really striking that it's such a simple idea, but it's so amorphous. And when you try to process it and partition it and compartmentalize it, it just evaporates for me. It's like a will-o'-the-wisp. But what really, I felt compelled that I had to ask a question, really, for some reason. And I guess what really struck me, and I joined slightly late because I was struggling to connect, but something that you said really struck a chord with me, which was like, just live a beautiful life, or just live a beautiful place. And that, can you elaborate on that a bit, or is it pointless to elaborate on it because that's simply what it is?
Well, you know, it's looking to, like, having the intention, in a sense, of wanting to live in a beautiful feeling on the inside. And then when you feel pretty on the inside, it shows on the outside, right? And then you start to have different eyes for where you live. So, like, I remember when I first met Sid, he was into wallpapering. And he would, like, get so into decorating his house. And he'd tell us all the details about the wallpaper pattern. And I was thinking, oh, God save me if I'm ever into decorating my house. But as I listened to him, I would just hear, like, oh yeah, I could, like, fix my house up a little bit. What happened is my roommate moved out with her boyfriend. And when she moved out, there was nothing personal left in my house. And I realized I'd never moved in. It was like I was kind of waiting to get married, which I guess I thought I would sooner or later. And so I just never moved in. It was like, wow, I got to move into my own house. So I started to see how to make my house be a reflection of me, and a reflection of what I thought was beautiful. And I remember I would go to my friend's house, who was one of the early teachers, and she had the most beautiful feeling in her house. She had these curtains that were sheer curtains, and everything was in pink and white, and it was just the feeling of her whole house was her feeling, right? And I said, gosh, I just love this. I mean, I can see when other people do things that I like, but I can't see it for myself. And she said, oh, Chris, just start with one thing. She said, and when you see, like, oh, I'll put a lamp here, put the lamp there. And then you see the next picture. And then you see the next thing. And then you start to create an outside world. It'll come to you what to do. So that's just kind of what you want to do in your life, is just get in a beautiful feeling inside of yourself, and then make your life reflect that, so that when you're not at work and you're not doing things where you're teaching the principles, you're not thinking about it anymore. You're thinking about your life. You're thinking about the people you love. You're thinking about how to enjoy yourself, how to learn, how to wake up to things. And then when you go back to your work, you got material to talk from, because you have new experiences, you have new stories, you have new ways of being, and you're learning from yourself. But it's always going toward toward that peaceful, calmer feeling, so that you take the time not to like see how much you can do on the weekend, how many, you know, that's the way I used to be, is I, you know, was working like 80 hours a week, and then I'd come home and I'd have to go to the cleaners and clean my house and do everything on the weekend, so that by Monday I was like ready to go again. And I never had any downtime. I never got really quiet. So as I started learning this, I mean, you know, when I learned this, there were no books, there was nothing on, there was no internet. So we didn't even have cell phones then. So that's how old this is. As I had like one Sid Banks tape, it was called The Seminar in Mental Health. I listened to that sucker every day. And so much so I started talking with an A. So it sounded like I was from Scotland, A. And I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm listening too much here. But you know, it is like, that's what I did, because I didn't know how to get quiet. I didn't know how to slow down. I didn't know how to do that. And I was still trying to figure that out. So things would come to me like read a book. Now I'm dyslexic. So after I graduated from my master's, I swore I'd never read another book in my life, because it's very hard for me. And so my mind's going a million miles an hour, and I'm thinking like, oh, okay, read a book. I thought, read a book? Where did that come from? But so I started reading these romance novels. Now you got to understand, I was 30 at the time. So I started reading Danielle Steele romance novels. As I'm reading romance novels, I'm starting to see the principles in the romance novels, you know, like, oh my gosh. And then, so things would come to me that would be what I needed to do to quiet down. Now, sometimes it would be just sit, you know, in those days we had these big records, those, what are they? Those, you know, big vinyl records, you know.
LPs.
I'd sit in my living room and listen to piano music or music that was calming for me, because that's what I like to do. But everybody's it's gonna come differently to you. So it's just like, to me, it's like really, it was tasting things to see how that felt, and getting out of my comfort zone of what I normally did. I'd do the opposite. Like, okay, normally I'd want to, like, I remember I took this a week off, and I would always go down from Minnesota to Florida for my time to quiet down. And then I went so many times in a year, I didn't have any money. So I still needed to take a week off. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I thought, okay, so you got to learn how to live on vacation at home. And so anything that came to mind that week that I wouldn't have done if I was in Florida, I was like, nope. And I had a lot of thoughts like, okay, go to the cleaners. Okay, clean the closet upstairs. I mean, things I hadn't done in years. Suddenly my mind was like bossing me around and telling me to get busy and get things done. And I remember it took me about 4 days of doing nothing before I finally was like, oh, okay, now I'm back. So it's listening to yourself to see what to do to come back to that feeling. And then when you're living in that feeling, you get different eyes. You just see life differently. And then you kind of follow that in a way that makes it more beautiful for you.
That's great.
And everybody's different. Everybody's different. That's the thing, is we're all so unique. We all have our own ideas about it. So there's no like right way or wrong way. It's just, and then you do that and then you switch again. Like that's the thing about Sid, was that he would, like when he'd come down and we'd spend time with him, it was not him talking about the principles. I mean, he would do that in big groups, but when we met with him personally, we'd just go hang out with him and do things like go to the swap meet and find stuff. Oh, here's my dogs are coming in here. They're going to attack me. Okay, all right, you back. Okay, all right. Okay, get down. Come on. I know you're here. Thank you very much. My husband takes them when I do these things so that they don't attack me, but I came home a little early, sorry. But it was, he would, like we'd go to the swap meet and I remember, you know, like I was a 30-year-old single woman. I was not into swap meets. I was, you know, that was not my thing. But I was like, he went there, I'd go with him. And then I'd listen and I'd watch him, and he was so fascinated by the stuff that people were selling at the swap meet, that what I would call junk that people were selling at the swap meet. And he would come up with these incredible treasures. Like he'd see stuff nobody else saw. And that was, I was like, wow, look at that. Isn't that interesting? So I was interested in how he was living his life. And that's kind of what I think is that we forget about that sometimes, that it's about the way we live our life rather than about what we're talking about, right? Yeah. So it's that beautiful feeling, and living in that then requires you to change. Like one of the things Sid would always say, if you change your level of consciousness, your life must change, right? If you change on the inside, the outside world must change. And sometimes that changes, then we get insecure, like, oh, wait a minute, like, I don't want that to change. But it's like things change in a way that are going to be perfect for you. You just, as you have the eyes for it, you're looking to see how you can, like, where is this leading me? Where is this taking me? What's happening here? And when you're in a beautiful feeling, just see how to do it more gracefully. You see how to change more gracefully over time. I still stumble on my feet and fall on my face frequently, but I'm way more graceful than I was at the beginning. But still, it's like I had the sliding doors shut in my lanai yesterday, and because I thought we had a rat out here. And so one of my dogs was inside and the other one was outside. So the one on the outside went running in and the door was shut. He didn't see that it was shut because it was glass, right? Boom, he hits the glass. And sometimes that's how it feels to me when I come up against my own thinking, right? It's like, boom, oh, well, what? I didn't even know there was thinking here, right? It's like kind of invisible. So it's like as you change, it's like you get your balance back again. And it's like, okay, now what do I have to change? What do I have to do differently? Like how's this insight going to bring something more beautiful to my life?
Yeah.
And to do that, you got to let go of the old. I think in Missing Link, Sid talks about if you have an old stale glass of wine, you have to pour out the old wine to get fresh new wine. And that's the metaphor he's using for that. It's like you got to let go of your past or the way you have been in order to get something new and fresh.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, and again, Christine, lovely, thank you. And we're actually beyond our time,
Okay.
and I just want to say thank you so much for it's been an absolutely delightful call, really, really inspiring. I've loved listening to you, so thank you really from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to do this, and thank you everybody who's joined us. I wonder if you have any closing remarks. Just to take us out.
No, I just think, you just, what Sid told me when I first started learning the principles was he called me up one day and he said, after I met him, and he said, Dearie, would you like me to help you? I was like, yeah. And he said, okay, just be you. And I thought, well, who the hell is that? He goes, just be you. And that's just be you. Just do what feels right for you. Follow your feeling. And you'll know and see how to make your life be magical.
Lovely. Well, it's been a magical call. Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking me. I really am grateful. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for the questions.
Thank you. Goodbye.